Welcome to the 13th narrated PowerPoint video about the Great Ideas Incorporated proposal for Bioproducts and Biosystems Engineering class BBE 4023, Process Control and Instrumentation. This video is about the oral presentation you will give to your Great Ideas Incorporated co-workers and the management team. You are hired by Great Ideas Incorporated, a small process control and instrumentation startup company, because they are looking for new process control and instrumentation systems to develop and market next year. The company's future and your employment depend on Great Ideas identifying and selecting innovative, automated products to bring to market. Now that you're nearly done with your proposal, it is time for you to give an oral presentation. The oral presentations will be short, 5 to 7 minutes long. The oral presentation should be similar to the executive summary. The presentation should focus on the compelling need, market, and general process description. You will make a few comments about the sensor, process control, and actuator recommended, but you should not get into very many details. The presentations will be made in BAE 225 during the lab times to your coworkers. You will be able to use PowerPoint, and you will be expected to evaluate the other presentations. You will be expected to send me your PowerPoint by noon on the day of your presentation so that they can be loaded onto a computer. Everyone in your lab section will be asked to evaluate your presentation using the grading rubric shown. Notice the things that you should have in your presentation. The last 3 items are on presentation quality and technique rather than content. Your oral presentation should be similar to your executive summary. It should communicate a compelling problem and your unique, innovative process control idea for solving the problem. You should also describe your market. Size is not critical, as is a clear market description. Follow the market with an outline or brief description of your process control system. Note which sensor, process control mode, and actuator you recommend using, but do not try to justify your decisions. Just report them. In the narrated PowerPoint about continuing professional development, I mentioned Joan Mosier and her seminar about making presentations. One of her key points was that every presentation should have an interesting opening line. This is similar to Reichert's recommendation for the opening line of your executive summary. Start your executive summary with the most compelling sentence you can come up with about your idea. You may want to notice that the opening line is worth 5 points on the grading rubric for the oral presentation. When you give your presentations, I will introduce you. I will simply give your name. So you should think of an opening line that follows that very simple introduction. Avoid starting your presentation by saying your name and saying, "I'm going to tell you about." Presuming that you'll be using PowerPoint, I strongly encourage that you have your proposal title and your name on the first slide. Personally, I like to do acknowledgments at the beginning too, but you don't have to follow my practice. Then focus on the compelling need for a new automated process control system, your market, and the key characteristics. Highlight the process being controlled, the process input being controlled, the actuator used, the sensor being used, and the control mode recommended. Highlight any key performance criteria that were very important to you. You don't need to explain or defend your recommendations. That will be done in the written report. At the end, summarize your conclusions and key recommendations. Finally, be prepared to answer a couple of questions about your proposal. The remaining part of this narrated PowerPoint gives some suggestions about making presentations that I have gathered over the years. Some are from Joan Mosier and some are from Randall Reeder. You'll need to make different kinds of presentations to different audiences. You may be presenting to colleagues or upper management. You might be asked to make a public presentation or give a seminar on a technical topic. You might give a presentation at a professional meeting. For each presentation, consider your audience. Think about your key points that you want to make and that you want people to remember. It may be better to make 3 key points that everyone can remember rather than gloss over 20 points that most will not be able to remember. One of the key things to do whenever you give a presentation is establish a rapport with your audience. People are more likely to listen to you if they feel a connection to you and your topic. This may not be necessary for your oral presentation in this class because we all know each other and you know why you are there. But if you are invited to speak at a public meeting, you may want to introduce yourself and provide information about why you are there and why people will be interested in what you have to say. As I said earlier, it is better to present 3 or 4 ideas that people will remember than to rush through 20 ideas that no one can remember. The number of key points can get larger if you have a long presentation, but it will be key to provide a framework for remembering the key points you want the audience to remember. In most cases, you want your audience to understand your 3 to 4 ideas and to remember your key points. That may sound easy, but it isn't. To give a successful presentation, you need to prepare and organize your presentation. In some respects, an oral presentation is like a written report. It requires some rough drafts and editing to organize a good presentation. Then you need to practice the presentation. As you practice, you may find that some of your original ideas are hard to say or get across, so you may need to spend time thinking about other ways to communicate the point you want to get across. Good visuals are important to good presentations. It takes a lot of time to prepare visuals. Finally, you may have to spend time thinking about how you're going to say something so that it is clear. Sometimes changing the order or the words makes a presentation clearer. Do not read your presentation. Do not turn to the screen and read your PowerPoints. Your PowerPoints should have key words and phrases rather than sentences, so you should not be able to read them. Most people find public speaking to be extremely stressful. So if you feel nervous or anxious, the feeling is normal. One way to try to reduce the nervous feeling is to pretend that you are talking to only one person. Most people are comfortable talking to one person, so by focusing on one person, you might be able to reduce the pressure of standing in front of a group of people to give your presentation. The following slides are some key points or recommendations for you to think about. This is one of the key points that Randall Reeder always made when he spoke about giving a presentation. I listened to him several times talk about how to give an oral presentation at a professional meeting. His point was that the first 15 to 30 seconds of a presentation was critical. It was that first impression. It was important to get the audience's attention. This may be one of the most stressful parts of a presentation, answering questions. For many people, the fear is that someone will ask a question for which you don't have an answer. Here are a couple of ideas for dealing with questions. First, make sure that you understand the question. A person loses credibility if they give an answer that does not fit the question that was asked. This can happen when they either did not hear the question or they misunderstood the question and they guessed about what was asked. One way to make sure that you understand the question is to rephrase it. If you rephrase it, you may put it in a form that is clearer to you and the audience. Rephrasing also gives the questioner a chance to check to see if you have heard the person correctly. Rephrasing may also give you more time to think about your answer. Whenever dealing with questions, feel free to take time to organize your thoughts and answer. If you are answering questions in a room where you as the speaker have a microphone and the questioner does not have a microphone, repeat the question so everyone in the room hears the question. By repeating the question over the microphone, everyone in the room knows the question and it gives you time to consider your answer. An answer without the question might be confusing to those that did not hear the original question. Sometimes you may get asked a question that you do not know the answer to. That is okay. If you don't know the answer, just acknowledge it and move on. At a public meeting, you may offer to get back to the person later after you've had time to look up an answer. Sometimes someone will make a comment that presents a whole new concept that you haven't considered. One reply is given here. That is an interesting idea. I'll consider it in future work. Here are several recommendations for making PowerPoints and visuals that will be used for giving public presentations. If you have been paying attention, you will see that I don't always follow them. I have collected them from several speakers on making presentations. One suggestion is to present only one idea at a time. It is important to give people time to process the idea before you give another idea that you want them to remember. Use phrases or keywords on your PowerPoints. Do not use sentences. This leads to the next point, which is that you need to be there to provide additional explanation of the PowerPoint or visual. If everything is written in detail, then everyone can just read your PowerPoints and you aren't needed. Do not include extraneous information in your PowerPoints that you are not going to discuss. The extra information will confuse people when you don't talk about it. They may spend time wondering why the extra information is there if it won't be discussed. All tables and figures should be simplified in PowerPoint and visuals. Large tables and complex figures are hard for the audience to follow and understand. Finally, it is recommended that you do not include equations or formulas in your PowerPoints or visuals. This is especially important for public audiences. The reasoning goes like this. The people that will understand the equation don't need to see it, and the people that do not understand the equation will simply be confused or overwhelmed with the equation. Don't show an equation unless you plan to go over it in detail term by term. Use a text that is large enough to read from the back of the room. It always seems funny to me when a speaker says, "I know that you can't read this in the back, but..." Well, if you want people to see the text, make it big enough to read. Use simple fonts that are easy to read. If you want to highlight some words, use bold or italics for emphasis. Do not underline words. Since all of my words are bolded in my PowerPoints, I have to use italics. If you use colors, pick ones that have good contrast. Also, watch out for combinations that colorblind people cannot distinguish. Some people like to use multicolored backgrounds. Just be forewarned that they may cause some people perception problems. Include pictures if you have them. Never apologize for a bad slide. Remove it if you have a bad slide. This point comes from Randall Reeder. He always said that people should not use laser pointers. His point was that if you need to use a pointer, you have a bad slide. In many cases, the slide has too much information or is too complex, so that it needs to be simplified so that the speaker does not need a laser pointer. Another reason for getting rid of the pointer is that the pointer usually is bouncing around because most speakers cannot keep the pointer still enough. So Randall's recommendation is to simplify the visuals and give clear directions to the audience to help them find the thing that you want to highlight. Here are a few more tips about giving presentations. Don't read the presentation. Speak as if you're talking to a friend. Don't read the text on your PowerPoint slides. If you use phrases and keywords, this will be taken care of. Face the audience and talk to the audience. Don't talk to the screen. If you're using a microphone on a stand, keep the microphone between you and what you are facing. So if you turn to look at the screen, stop talking because the microphone won't pick up what you're saying. Try to be yourself when you give your presentation. As I said before, pretend that you're talking to a friend to reduce the stress of talking to a large group. Relax and keep breathing. Some people are good at telling jokes, some aren't. If you aren't a good joke teller, don't try to tell a joke. To make presentation giving easier, keep things simple and short. Use simple words. Avoid long, drawn-out sentences and jargon if you want your audience to stay with you. Pauses are okay. You don't need to talk non-stop. Finally, if you're giving a long presentation, have some breaks. Public speaking is considered by many people to be a stressful or difficult thing to do. But with planning, practice, and following the suggestions given, you'll go a long way as a public speaker. Good luck. Write down questions that come to mind as you watch this video. Bring your questions up in class.